Welcome to the Big Book Study podcast for anyone and everyone interested in a spiritual way of life. We are a step study which meets each week on Sundays at 2 p.m. Eastern and Wednesdays at 9 p.m. Eastern. You can find our website at primarypurposebigbookstudy.com. I'm Kathleen from Colorado, and we also have Heather from Saskatchewan, Nicole from Texas, Tina from Idaho, and Dave from Oregon. So today we are going to be discussing step 10. And the first reading that we're going to do out of the big book, I will start with. This thought brings us to step 10, which suggests we continue to take personal inventory and continue to set right any new mistakes as we go along. We vigorously commenced this way of living as we cleaned up the past. We have entered the world of the spirit. Our next function is to grow in understanding and effectiveness. This is not an overnight matter. It should continue for our lifetime. Continue to watch for selfishness, dishonesty, resentment, and fear. When these crop up, we ask God at once to remove them. We discuss them with someone immediately and make amends if we have harmed anyone. Then we resolutely turn our thoughts to someone we can help. Love and tolerance of others is our code. And I will make a comment to get us started. So we have been studying the steps prior to 10. So we've done a very thorough inventory. And we still need to clean up the past because we're still working on step 9. But as soon as we start on step 9, we start on step 10. And we've gotten pretty current with, and that has opened up this channel to our source, to our higher power. And we need to keep that channel clear. And we're going to need it to be clear every day for the rest of our life. Because life is going to continue to have things that might be challenging, and we are going to need to be spiritually fit each day, or we're going to go right back to our old way of living because we've got this mind that's going to tell us, something like it'll be different this time or whatever. So there's lots of good stuff in this paragraph about having to do this. We cleaned up the past, but we are going to need to do this for a lifetime. It's a new way of life. And there's these, these watchwords, these things that as soon as we notice that we feel selfish, dishonest, resentful, or afraid, as soon as that happens, we're going to do a step 10 so that we can stay current and cleaned up, so that we are able to give, we are able to live the life that we were intended to live by our Creator. And love and tolerance is now our code. That's our new way of life. It's not selfishness. It's not self, and get. It's love and tolerance of others. And I'll pass.
Thanks, Kathleen. This is Nicole. I just wanted to offer a comment around this paragraph that in some of the readings that we've done prior to this, they often refer or draw a parallel to building a structure, like building a new house. And basically, the process of 1 through 5, and then 6, 7, 8, is sort of tearing that house to the ground. And we're beginning to, and they describe the step 4 and 5 as an inventory where we're going through almost like a business would take inventory of unsaleable goods on our shelves, right? So we're going through the pantries, we're looking through the closets, we're kind of digging out all of the stuff that's been blocking us. We've, now the house is leveled, which usually happens at step 1, we fall. The house is leveled, but it takes us through step 5 to really level it. And now we're building something new. And so, where it says here, we have entered the world of the spirit, that kind of tells me that, this is just kind of entering the doorway. Just, we've done this work so far, and it's not that we are now completely spiritually fit and ready to, that we're cured of this thing. It's that we're entering the doorway, and now we're entering a room where there's no furniture, nothing, and we begin to build, right? and and so these things are going to continue to crop up. These are like mini step 4 and 5s every day, and just like Kathleen explained, that it's a process of continuing to keep that channel open and free, and also adding these new structures to the spiritual house that we're building. What's our new ideals? What are we growing towards? What were our old ideas, and what are we trying, what's the new spiritual path that we're trying to carve from there? And I'll pass.
Thank you, Nicole. This is Tina from Idaho. And my comments are that this thought brings us to step 10. So this is what's going to happen every time we're disturbed. These instructions in this paragraph. So it says, we continue this way of living as we clean up the past. So as we finish all those step 9s, we're gonna do these step 10s. We don't wait till we're done with all the 9s. We start immediately. After we've done our very first 9th step amends, we embark on doing 10ths going forward. Our next function is to grow in understanding and effectiveness. So as we do this work, we're going to understand more. We have not arrived. We're at the beginning here, and effectiveness. So we're going to learn more and more all the time as we live in 10, 11, and 12. It's going to continue for our lifetime. So it says, when these crop up, these disturbances, we ask God at once to remove them. We discuss them with someone immediately. So the someone we discuss them with is our sponsor. There's a spot in the instructions prior to this that says we have to tell someone else all our life story. So most of us in our lives have decided that we're going to tell this person this particular piece of information, and that person that particular piece of information. We know people who we believe are going to approve of us. So, but what this tells us is we're going to share everything with one person. And the reason why we're going to do that is because we've got to come out of hiding. For this to work, we've got to tell someone else all our life story. We're not going to share bits and pieces and parts and stuff with people that we think are going to approve of us or be impressed or, side with us on issues 1 through 4. And then this person who's going to side with us on issues 5 through 7, etc. We're going to tell one person all of it. And then it says, the order of this is really important. We discuss them with someone immediately and make amends quickly if we've harmed someone. So we talk about it with our sponsor before we make amends. Otherwise, sometimes we codependents are apologizing for things we shouldn't be apologizing for, that we're just trying to be people pleasers. We're just trying to get liked, or we miss things that we should be making amends for. So we've got to run this stuff by somebody else who's not emotionally involved in our drama, who can see things more objectively. Um, and then we resolutely turn our thoughts to someone we can help. So we look for someone to whom we can help. And with that, I will pass.
Thank you, Tina. This is Heather from Saskatchewan. I just wanted to comment on the sentence, "This is not an overnight matter." I think we have to be very mindful of the fact that this is not something like a light switch. Our journey through the program and our journey of getting in touch with the world of the spirit and our higher power is, first of all, an individual one. It cannot be compared or to someone else's. And it also grows and changes over time. And that's how we become more understanding and more effective in our recovery. And I'll pass.
Thank you, Heather. This is Dave. I'm from Oregon. This is definitely an action step, action paragraph. It's probably the most instructive paragraph in the book because it's so specific. There's 4 things to watch for and 4 actions to take if we see those things. Now, be very clear that we might see selfishness, dishonesty, resentment, or fear crop up in our actions, but they're very likely to crop up in our mind and thinking and emotions the earliest. And it's a really good idea to watch for them there. We might be able to take an intervention in the next 4 actions before we dump this selfishness, dishonesty, resentment, and fear onto people around us. So I'll tell a very brief story. I remember years ago, I was early in my recovery and I was taking a long walk. It was at least a half hour one way. And I remember feeling disturbed during that walk about a couple things that were going on in my life at the time. This is more than a decade ago, but it just so happened that I ran into a member of my AA home group way back half an hour from the car on a nature trail, kind of almost in the wilderness. He just happened to be there going the other direction. And when we saw each other, he asked me how it was going. I said, not great. And he had one question for me. His question was, "Are you talking to God?" And I realized I don't believe that I had done anything anywhere close to talking to God once in the half hour since I had left the car. That's not a good place for me. That is a self-obsessed, listening to my head think, old ideas place. And this instruction is we ask God at once when selfishness, dishonesty, resentment, and fear are within us. That can be done when we're alone, and it can be done in a walk on a trail. The next 3 instructions are very action-oriented. The first opportunity available, discuss them with someone, make amends quickly if we have carried out harm in action. And then the most powerful, perhaps, resolutely turn our thinking right there in that very moment to how we can be helpful and useful, not only to other people in our recovery program, but any thinking, perhaps helpful and useful to a family member, to a friend, to a person who's walking towards us on the trail where we can say hi and smile instead of, obsessing right on past them or whatever. These are actions that carry a great deal of power that we did not have in the past in our obsession and our disease. And with that, I will pass.
Thanks, Dave. This is Heather. We'll move on. We're at the bottom of page 84. And we ceased fighting anything or anyone, even alcohol. For by this time sanity will have returned. We will seldom be interested in liquor. If tempted, we will recoil from it as from a hot flame. We react sanely and normally, and we will find that this has happened automatically. We will see that our new attitude toward liquor has been given us without any thought or effort on our part. It just comes. That is the miracle of it. We are not fighting it, neither are we avoiding temptation. We feel as though we had been placed in a position of neutrality, safe and protected. We have not sworn off. Instead, the problem has been removed. It does not exist for us. We are neither cocky nor are we afraid. That is our experience. That is how we react so long as we keep in fit spiritual condition. And I'll do just a brief comment around, it told us in the previous paragraph what we need to do to remain in a fit spiritual condition. And when we do that, these are the results. And I think a lot of this comes from doing the work, doing our spiritual house cleaning. The idea that, when we do steps 4 and steps 5, and we look at our defects and we tell those defects to someone else, we begin to understand and see the patterns of our behavior and our problem, and we see them as being the problem. And we understand and see that doing those codependent behaviors for me is the problem. And so now it is like, once we recognize those, it is exactly like we recoil from it as from a hot flame. And so when I fall back into those old thinking patterns, is where it starts for me, then I know that I'm acting codependently, and I can turn to my higher power. I can do those 4 steps that we talked about in the previous paragraph, and I can get back to center, back to balance, and keep in fit spiritual condition. And I'll pass.
Thanks, Heather. Yeah, I wanted to focus a minute on this. We will not, we won't be fighting anything anymore. And over time, as we, do repeatedly this action of noticing when we're in selfishness or fear or resentfulness, and when we watch for that, notice it, and do this 10th action step, we slowly begin to see when we're trying to fight something, we're trying to make something go our way, which is what I think of as fighting something. Um, and we eventually get to this place where it's all the way where we don't fight life anymore. We don't fight life as it is. Because as soon as we start to fight life as it is, we start to, we get selfish around it. We want it to be different. And we begin to live this life where we don't, we're kind of in peacefulness and kind of freedom, because we don't fight, what is. We just live in 24 hours a day, and we watch for these things. And then the other thing I wanted to mention is this, it's very clear. It doesn't say that we never, ever, ever want any of, fall into selfishness. It says, as long as we keep in fit spiritual condition. So that's going to require daily, every 24 hours, taking these steps of 10, 11, and 12, especially 12, all 3 of them. But, it's this, that is how that they're directly correlated. as spiritually fit as I am is directly correlated with me having, temptation, or it's directly correlated with this neutral place. Uh, and that doesn't, spiritual fit condition is something that, we work on to maintain it. We don't arrive at it and it never goes away. And they're clear about how important it is for us to take the actions to stay in that spiritual condition. And with that, I pass.
Thanks, Kathleen. This is Tina in Idaho. So these are the 10th step promises. If we do step 10, if we do all the steps that steps 1 through 10, these are the promises that we will experience. And when you read them, it sounds almost like a miracle, given how miserable we were. Saying that we will see that our new attitude toward getting liked, loved, attention, to be number one has been given us without any effort on our part. It just comes. That's the miracle of it. We are not fighting it. Neither are we avoiding temptation. We feel as though we have been placed in a position of neutrality, safe and protected. We have not even sworn off. Instead, the problem has been removed. It does not exist for us. So that sounds like a miracle. But really, this ball of yarn analogy explains it. So imagine a table full of green balls of yarn, and we're going to call those problem. All those balls of yarn, you see that a tabletop completely full to overflowing of green balls of yarn, of problem. And the way we've been living our lives and the problems that we thought we had were things like, they don't like me, or they're not paying attention to me, or I'm not getting my way here, or things aren't going my way there. So we have all of these problems that we're attending to on this tabletop, and we're adding more and more and more, and it's overflowing with problems. That's how our life feels when we get to our bottom. And now imagine a huge basket of purple balls of yarn at your feet. We're going to call those balls of yarn solution. So what we've been focused on our whole lives that brought us to our bottom was problem. And if you're a person with the spiritual malady, the more you focus on problem, the more problem you get, the more it grows. So now, because we've been beaten into a state of reasonableness with our misery, we are ready to follow these instructions and focus exclusively on solution. Working steps 10, 11, and 12, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. And we put one of those purple balls of yarns, we pick it up. It's an action. We pick it up out of the basket. We put it on the table. Then we pick another one up and set it on the table. Another purple ball, more solution, more solution, more solution, until that starts to push the green balls of yarn off of the table. But it didn't happen by us. What happened by us is that we have focused on something entirely different. We have focused on solution, and our problems are solved without any effort on our part. And with that, I pass.
Thanks, Tina. This is Dave. I'm from Oregon. That these are promises has already been stated. We could possibly refer to this as the promise of sobriety. But notice that it is not a description of how we figured out how to quit. There's been something that has come to us without any effort on our part, is what it says. Notice that the timing of the promise of sobriety, which is what so many addicts are looking for, is, lack of relapse, whatever you want to call it, is the timing of it immediately follows the 10th step. That's where the actions are described. This program, this paragraph that we're in right now describes the results of the actions of the 10th step. We have now been placed in connection with the power greater than ourselves. We have placed our trust and faith and our actions towards being reliant on a power greater than ourselves. And, it puts us in a position where, we are, the description is safe and protected. We haven't figured it out. We're not fighting it, etc. We simply experience that when we rely on the power works. But there is a whole program of actions described to get us to the place of relying on this power greater than ourselves. That'll pass. Thanks.
It's Nicole. I was going to say that the this becoming less and less interested, recoiling from it as a hot flame. So when we get here, we're in such misery, and nothing that we've tried has worked. We just keep suffering and suffering and going deeper and deeper down this rabbit hole, and there's no way out. So when we work these steps leading up to step 10 and 11, if you have this spiritual malady and you apply the principles and you take the actions, there's a shift. It's sort of counterintuitive to how we're used to going about our problems, kind of what is said before, that we're focusing on solution instead of the problem. And we get a little taste of what it feels like to be happy, joyous, and free. And it comes without any effort. So we're not focused on trying harder. We're not focused on being happier. We're not focused on being a nicer person or a more loving person or more forgiving. Those things come as just sort of a byproduct of these actions that we're taking. And there's in the beginning, it is difficult to turn that ship around. It really isn't difficult at all to do these actions. The turn is immediate, the relief is immediate. The only part that feels like turning a tanker sometimes is our self-will. Like, just at each moment, am I going to give this up and surrender to this simple program of recovery? And it gets easier and easier. And the more exposure we have to this relief that we experience, exactly how they have described it here, that it does feel like a miracle, then less and less we want to go visit our misery, But our misery is always there, and we can go back to it at any time. But we've never had anything, or I'd never had anything before that ever worked. And so sometimes there are days that I go back to my misery and I'll stay there until I'm in enough pain that I want to, make the turn. But we don't have to spend any time there at all. It just is really dependent on how much pain we want to collect. But more and more we become, as we're living this life to give rather than get, we become more interested in our fellows. We become more interested in being of service and of help. And less interested in self-pity and self-obsession and fear. Those things just begin to fall away. They'll never go away. And these 10 steps are because they're going to constantly come up for our, throughout our lives, but we're continuing to address it as it comes. And I'll pass there.
Thank you, Nicole. I'm going to move on here. It is easy to let up on the spiritual program of action and rest on our laurels. We are headed for trouble if we do, for alcohol is a subtle foe. We are not cured of alcoholism. What we really have is a daily reprieve contingent on the maintenance of our spiritual condition. Every day is a day when we must carry the vision of God's will into all of our affairs, all of our activities. How can I best serve thee? Thy will, not mine, be done. These are thoughts which must go with us constantly. We can exercise our willpower along this line all we wish. It's the proper use of the will. Much has already been said about receiving strength, inspiration, and direction from Him who has all knowledge and power. If we have carefully followed directions, we have begun to sense the flow of His Spirit into us. To some extent, we have become God conscious. We have begun to develop the vital sixth sense. But we must go further, and that means more action. So at the very front of the book, on the title page, it says Alcoholics Anonymous, the story of how many thousands of men and women have recovered, past tense, from alcoholism. In our case, some of our cases, codependency. So that's a strong word. And I had been in other recovery meetings 20 years before I got into these primary purpose meetings. I'd never heard the word recovered. But it's written in the title page of the book, and it's written there because we have a reliable path to recovered. It's not a miracle. It is a completely reliable path, and we just read about it. It's contingent. We have a daily reprieve contingent on the maintenance of our spiritual condition. What is that? When I'm disturbed, I do a 10th step, and I turn my attention to where I can be helpful and useful. I'm starting to live my purpose now. And when I am doing that, turning from a disturbance, doing a 10th step, seeing how I can be helpful and useful, I'm recovered. I can go back to my misery and my shenanigans anytime I want to do that. And the really good news is that anytime I do that, I'm going to feel reliable misery. And that reliable misery is going to remind me that I know the path and that I can step back onto the path anytime I choose. And I pass.
Thank you, Tina. So here we are with this great prayer right in the middle of the paragraph. How can I best serve thee? Thy will, not mine, be done. So we can begin to, for me, it's been a slow but steady increase in this prayer throughout my day, because what I was used to was asking myself, what do I need to do? What's my best idea? What do I want? What do I want out of life? What do I want out of life today? What do I want out of life in 6 months and 5 years? And if some seeming problem or life gives me something that I think is wrong and a problem, so here I am fighting it again. I'm so used to asking, what do I do? And coming up with all these great ideas. And we learned way back on step 3 that we're trying to run the show, and that's what we're used to. We're trying to solve anything and everything that's not the way we want it to be. We're trying to get everybody to do and be in our idea of what life should be. And so now it's like, slowly, more and more times a day, when something crops up that I don't know what to do with, or I feel confused.
Thanks, Kathleen. This is Heather. I just wanted to comment on a couple of sentences. The first one is the first sentence. It is easy to let up on our spiritual program of action and rest on our laurels. And, I think this is easily a trap that many of us can fall into. And it's actually documented in this book about alcoholics who, did quit drinking and things were going well, and they were right back down to bottom again. And it's because we have to learn that step 10 is a discipline. And I know for myself, when I started my step 10, my sponsor gave me a nightly routine to follow and to be accountable to her around, so that I developed the discipline and the routine around this 10th step. And so that it became part of my day. And that's important because, the minute we start to let that 10th step slip, we do become in the position to become disconnected from our higher power. And our job is, as it says, is to turn our thinking and our actions over to our higher power to do God's will in all of our activities. And so that's why we need that discipline and why we need that routine. And also the idea, later it said, if we have carefully followed directions, not if we've just kind of done it haphazardly, occasionally, whatever, it means carefully followed the directions, then we keep that connection and we become in the flow of our higher power. And with that, I'll pass.
Thank you, Heather. I'm Dave. I'm from Oregon. Addiction, the book calls it alcoholism, but we know that addiction is the root disease, is exactly that. It's a disease, it's an illness. We're not cured of it any more than, say, a diabetic or an asthmatic suddenly isn't going to any longer have diabetes or asthma. This is for the rest of our life. They use the word constantly quite a bit in this section. They used it again in this paragraph. These are thoughts which must go with us constantly. And the thought is, again, not my thinking, but how I can stay close to my higher power. That is the thought which can go with us constantly. It says must go with us constantly. And we can exercise our willpower to do that. To do what? To be trusting and relying on our higher power. And this is a real cautionary paragraph. To the extent that we do not do this, we get in trouble. To the extent that we do apply ourselves to this and do apply our willpower to this, do we get in the flow? It says we begin to sense the flow of spirit. The flow comes through action. We're not stagnant. We don't get help from God and then, we're okay because we got something. God works through us. The power of God flows through us to be helpful and useful to others. And then we receive the results of that power flowing through us, as the statement says from the people who wrote this book. We're conscious of its flow through our action. And with that, I'll pass. Thanks.
Thanks, Dave. I have one more comment to add. My sponsor told me, because I didn't have a higher power when I got here, that I could say this way. How can I best serve love? Love's will, not my fear, be done. And with that, I will pass.
Thanks, Tina. This is Nicole. I think I just wanted to add that if we aren't, if the God idea or a higher power, whatever idea, we just need a kernel to begin with of a loving higher power. It doesn't have to be anyone else's higher power. And sometimes we're starting from zero. We have absolutely no concept of what that might be. and we just take the actions. It's kind of like learning to play piano. In the beginning, we're just plunking out chopsticks. We're just, there might not be any feeling in it. There might not be any belief that we can do it. We just sit there and practice our scales. And as we do that, we, begin to hear music. We begin to have a little more dexterity. And then eventually we learn a song that's more complicated, more with more levels or whatever, and then at some point maybe we just play. Maybe it's just the flow of our own creativity with our own higher power flowing through. So this is a process that, as they said, takes a lifetime. But where it says much has already been said about receiving strength, inspiration, and direction from him who has all knowledge and power, and that we're beginning to sense this flow of the spirit. And they address this some in the chapter, we agnostics, that to some extent we all have had that experience of having some intuition, having some kind of sense that there's something bigger than us at some point in our lives, maybe many times in our lives. But we're beginning to become conscious of God. It's taking the action to bring the spiritual into our lives. So I just like thinking of that flipped around, instead of God conscious of God. And if there's no other comments, I'll go ahead and read our next paragraph. Okay, step 11 suggests prayer and meditation. We shouldn't be shy on this matter of prayer. Better men than we are using it constantly. It works if we have the proper attitude and work at it. It would be easy to be vague about this matter, yet we believe we can make some definite and valuable suggestions. When we retire at night, we constructively review our day. Were we resentful, selfish, dishonest, or afraid? Do we owe an apology? Have we kept something to ourselves which should be discussed with another person at once? Were we kind and loving towards all? What could we have done better? Were we thinking of ourselves most of the time, or were we thinking of what we could do for others, of what we could pack into the stream of life? But we must be careful not to drift into worry, remorse, or morbid reflection, for that would diminish our usefulness to others. After making our review, we ask God's forgiveness and inquire what corrective measures should be taken. So I'll go ahead and start the comments on this one. I mean, they just could not have laid it out any clearer, of these precise actions, these suggestions that we can take. So if we have no idea, how do we begin to have this relationship to prayer and meditation? They're saying, here's a way that you can go about it. And it's sort of, what they're really summarizing or giving specifics around is what we do in our fourth step. We're looking for these things when we're working on our fourth step. Where have we been selfish, dishonest, or afraid? What is clogging up the pipes? Of our ability to love and have compassion for others. Usually when we're going to bed before we recover, we're completely self-obsessed. Some of us couldn't even turn our minds off for a minute, or we're laying there thinking about what someone said or what someone did, or what did that mean, or what's going to happen in the future here, or thinking about the past and suffering around the past. So our thoughts going to bed prior to recovery probably looked something akin to that, just complete like a runaway train, or complete self-obsession. Or maybe it was shut down, isolation and avoidance type of things. But here, our focus isn't on what we're not getting or what we might lose, or it's not on ourselves. We're thinking about really keeping that pathway clear, and then we're thinking about others. Right there, what are we packing into the stream of life? And again, not that it's meant to be beating ourselves up, like that isn't the idea of it. It's you know, doing our little checklist, was there room here? Maybe, what might I have done here if I believed that there's a loving higher power guiding me? What different choice could I have made? And then we begin to practice those things. So I think that's all I had. And I'll pass.
Thanks, Nicole. This is Tina from Idaho. So what I'm seeing here, it's reminding me that, when we do our ninth, one of the parts of our ninth step is to create new ideals for our behavior going forward. And here in this 11th step, it starts off by saying we constructively review our day. So it doesn't say we destructively review our day. And that's what most of us did for a lifetime. We, thought and rethought and analyzed and dissected and just were anxious about things and went through things in our mind, um, you know, beating ourselves and other people up. But this is a constructive review. So we are looking for what we're building, what we're constructing with our higher power. And it gives us these hints where we're kind and loving toward all. So this begins to be our motives. Other people get to do what they do. We get to start living in this kind and loving way. And it's its own reward. And we are also looking for what we could pack into the stream of life. What could we contribute today? So we're looking for what we can give instead of what we can take. And that is a very joyful way to live. And then it gives us this great phrase here: we do not drift into worry, remorse, or morbid reflection. That's not what the review is for. It is for us to get more clarity on our ideals and what we're constructing with our higher powers' help. And with that, I'll pass.
Thanks, Tina. This is Heather. I just wanted to comment on a couple of phrases here. It works if we have the proper attitude and work at it. I think for me, that has been the biggest change around prayer and my communication with God. Before I came into the program, my conception of God was as an authoritarian parent who I had to please in order to be, kept in good grace and so on. And my prayers were often prayers of help me, emphasis on me, do so and so, or help, please make someone do such and such. And all of my prayers focused around myself and what I wanted. And I went to God as a last resort after I had tried everything I could think of to make things happen. And really, what I find step 11 has given me, and the program working the steps, has, given me a new perception about prayer. It's taught me that I pray for God's will, not mine, like we read on the last page. And so now my prayers focus usually around blessings. I do a lot of praying for other people, and I do a lot of gratitude in my prayers. And so that has been the drastic change in my attitude around prayer and how I work it. And with that, I'll pass.
Thanks, Heather. I wanted to just focus for a moment on this not worry, remorse, or morbid reflection. So this, this common thing that addicts and codependents have is self-loathing, which is selfishness. And it's very self-absorbed, and it's a way of life that we are so used to. And then, we have these decades, many of us, of living in the disease. um and when we read the stories in the book, if you look at Bill's story or Dr. Bob's story, and it just goes on and on about the destructiveness, and what was, all the different things that blew up over time, and all the people that got hurt, um, all the lies, all that kind of stuff. So, we've cleaned all that out. We've done our inventories. We're now, we are either still working on step 9, or maybe we've completed it. But we have this way of, like, just feeling like we're crappy people. Um and I love the way the book says, we're not bad people. Um and explains what it is that's happening in the mind and the body, which we've covered in previous podcasts. And so this is a really big shift. And I think codependence, I know that, I had to let all that go. And that's what it's talking about here. I couldn't be useful. I still can't be useful if I am, diminishing myself, and if I am self-loathing over something that I've done, that I've noticed that I've done. Um, and, I can't, and because when I do that, then I start looking to other people to tell me I'm okay. And, it just takes up all this space and all this energy and resources. And it's just not there. You can't be useful. So I think that this is a new way of life. And we immediately, on our steps in, this is what we start to practice. We don't drift into worry or remorse, no matter what we did that day, no matter what it is. um we're done with that. We have to learn to be efficient about this. We've wasted enough time focusing on ourselves, and it got us nowhere. Um, and so now we're focusing on being useful and helpful. And this inventory process in step 11, this nightly review, is just to keep our channel clean, and so we can stay spiritually fit. And with that, I pass.
Thanks, Kathleen. This is Dave. Just a brief comment on this nightly review paragraph, that the purpose of those instructions, as made clear in the last couple sentences, is to inquire of our higher power what corrective measures can be taken, so constructive, rather than self-flagellation and worry and remorse. Very clear difference. I'm going to go ahead and keep reading on what we do the next morning on awakening. Let us think about the 24 hours ahead. We consider our plans for the day. Before we begin, we ask God to direct our thinking, especially asking that it be divorced from self-pity, dishonest, or self-seeking motives. Under these conditions, we can employ our mental faculties with assurance, for after all, God gave us brains to use. Our thought life will be placed on a much higher plane when our thinking is cleared of wrong motives. In thinking about our day, we may face indecision. We may not be able to determine which course to take. Here we ask God for inspiration, an intuitive thought or a decision. We relax and take it easy. We don't struggle. We're often surprised how the right answers come after we have tried this for a while. What used to be the hunch or the occasional inspiration gradually becomes a working part of the mind. Being still inexperienced and having just made conscious contact with God, it's not probable we are going to be inspired at all times. We may pay for that presumption in all sorts of absurd actions and ideas. Nevertheless, we find that our thinking will, as time passes, be more and more on the plane of inspiration. We come to rely on it. My comments, this general section has been dubbed the design for living, these steps 10 and 11. And they sure do give us a design. They give us a very specific outline of actions that we can take. And in this section, they even talk about the time of day specifically that we should do it. And when they say we start, we keep it within 24 hours. Now that's a contrast to worry and morbid reflection, which has a tendency to go towards awfulization and go towards things that could happen or go wrong, as well as things that are happening, and so on and so forth. So we keep it in 24 hours, one day at a time is often the slogan we hear in the program of addiction recovery. And they make it so clear that I'm going to change the words just a little bit. Their words are self-pity, dishonest, or self-seeking motives. And these come up over and over again. They came up in the 10th step, and here they are again. Another way to refer to those is self-pity, which might be feeling sorry for myself or feeling bad about myself. Dishonest, another word for that might be making up a story about what's going to happen or what people are thinking or what people meant when they said this or did that. And self-seeking, that could be termed wanting our way with circumstances or with people. When we put it in those words, all of a sudden it becomes crystal clear. Oh my gosh, these are the exact things that my mind and my emotions, you put those two together, you might use the single word ego to describe that. These are the tools that I use when I talk to myself. Or that, if you think of things separately, that when my mind or my ego is talking to me, these are the things that it's using to do so. And it says, with being cleared of those particular motives, the mind is not such a bad tool. It actually can be a very healthy and useful and productive and helpful tool, as long as it doesn't use the motives just described. We don't listen to those kinds of motives, then we have a much higher plane with which we can use our mind. And then the indecision paragraph, we might feel confused. We don't know what the right words are to say. We don't know the next decision or action to take. It says we turn to, I'm going to say again with a little bit different words, inspiration, it says, intuition, it says, maybe we turn to our gut, to our heart, to our connection, not rely on our think, not rely on analyzing, not relying on precomposing, maybe is another tool we use with this, but rather we look to what's my compass telling me? What's my gut telling me? What's my heart telling me would be the right course to take here? Relax, take it easy, don't struggle, get right sized, get reoriented, get connected to our higher power. And with that, I will pass.
Thanks, Dave. This is Tina in Idaho. So this section here is where I started getting connected to a power greater than myself. This idea of staying in this 24 hours, I was in such extreme anxiety when I hit my bottom. And I was told that what that means is that if I'm in tomorrow, I'm not with my higher power. If I'm in yesterday, I'm not with my higher power. I only have this 24. And that simplified my life, and my anxiety dramatically reduced. And self pity's already been discussed well, dishonesty, but self seeking, I wanted to add. For me, that's like, I want to get liked, I want to get loved. You put the word get in front of it, and it's all self seeking from there. Get liked, get loved, get attention, get wanted, get needed, get approval, um, look good, manage my image, those kinds of things. So I'm trying to get something on the outside to make me feel better on the inside. And this second next paragraph, how that's looked manifested in my life is that I do a morning meditation, I do a writing meditation, and I just jot down just like 4 or 5 little bullets of what is it that I'm not quite sure how to handle today. And in the process of doing that, I just completely know that I've given that to my higher power, and I turn to do the things that I know how to do in that 24 hours. And the things that I don't know how to do, I absolutely trust that when it's time for me to do anything about those things, I will be informed. My higher power will give me an intuitive thought or a decision about that. And I don't even have to think about it again, because when I need to know, I'm on a need to know basis. And when I need to know, I'll know. And with that, I pass.
Thank you, Tina. This is Heather. I just wanted to comment on a couple of sentences in the second paragraph. In thinking about our day, we may face indecision. And it really, what it comes down to is kind of the journey we have in developing that connection to our higher power. I know for myself, when I was just working on steps 10, 11, and 12 and beginning to live this design for living outlined in the book, I was like a newborn colt. My recovery and it was on very shaky legs because I was trying to do things I had never done before. And I did have a lot of indecision. I even can remember myself being obsessed about listening for God's will in my life in those early days. And my sponsor would turn me back again and again to this page and the 2 sentences: we relax and take it easy, we don't struggle. And I had to remind myself of that over and over again. And with just reviewing those, it gave me a sense of peace. It gave me freedom from my thoughts. And over time, I didn't have to keep coming back to it all the time, day after day, during the day, many times a day. And so that was kind of the beginning of my journey, and then it turned into what it says here: what used to be the hunch or the occasional inspiration gradually becomes a working part of the mind. And I experienced that as well. Once I could relax and trust that higher power was with me, and if higher power had something for me to do, that I would get it. It did start as a hunch or maybe occasional inspiration. But as I go on this journey and continue to grow my relationship with my higher power, what it becomes for me is a conversation throughout the day. And it's me constantly, and consistently checking in with my higher power to see what they would have me do in this particular moment of the day. And if there's nothing, it's nothing. And, like was mentioned, then I do what I know how to do and I carry on. But it really is the miracle of the program that, what we have to do is kind of develop a whole new way of thinking. And with that, I'll pass.
Thanks, Heather. This is Nicole. And, just comparatively prior to recovering, that this is, most likely we didn't think about the 24 hours ahead other than, possibly in fear of the day or, trying to prepare ourselves to maybe position things so we could get the thing that we thought we needed or the thing that we thought we wanted. Usually it was, probably something like strategizing, or fear or something like that. So this is a completely different way of thinking and beginning, like setting our intention and our motive before we even start, because we're human, and because then on top of being human, we have this spiritual malady. Our set point, right, pretty much out of the gate we might act on selfishness or dishonesty or fear or self-obsession or in consideration of others, only thinking about ourselves. So it's really setting our motive and our intention, and then just considering the freedom that comes from not being the ones trying to run our day, right? It was a job that was way too big for us to begin with. And we were living in self will and, sort of bouncing back and forth based on circumstances, so our happiness or our sadness or our fear or whatever was going up and down like a yo-yo based on what circumstances outside of us were happening or what other people are doing or thinking or what we think they're doing or thinking. So by the time the day is done, we're completely spent and been more than likely on some kind of an emotional roller coaster. But the freedom that comes from that we, when we're living higher powers plan for us, then it's like open to the next moment that arrives. Instead of trying to get our way, just being present to how the day unfolds and trying to get connected to in each moment, what is my higher powers will for me here? What is love's will for me here? How can I take this moment as an opportunity to try to practice give? What can I contribute? How can I belong and show up, and say I belong? Those types of things. And then let's see, I wanted to add one more thing that, uh, yeah, that when we're not trying to run the show and then something happens, whereas before we might become immediately disturbed and it could wreck our whole day because something comes along that we didn't expect, this freedom that starts to come from perhaps there's nothing right and nothing wrong going on. Like according to our plan and trying to get life on our terms, stuff is going right and wrong all the time. But if a circumstance shows up, then to consider what if this is higher powers will for me? And how can I try to get in harmony with whatever this moment is that's presenting? And I think that's all I had. I'll pass.
Thanks, Nicole. Okay, I'm going to read the next section. We usually conclude the period of meditation with a prayer that we will be shown all through the day what our next step is to be, that we be given whatever we need to take care of such problems. We ask especially for freedom from self-will, and we are careful to make no request for ourselves only. We may ask for ourselves, however, if others will be helped. We are careful never to pray for our own selfish ends. Many of us have wasted a lot of time doing that, and it doesn't work. You can easily see why. If circumstances warrant, we ask our wives or friends to join us in morning meditation. If we belong to a religious denomination which requires a definite morning devotion, we attend to that also. If not members of religious bodies, we sometimes select and memorize a few set prayers which emphasize the principles we have been discussing. There are many helpful books also. Suggestions about these may be obtained from one's priest, minister, or rabbi. Be quick to see where religious people are right. Make use of what they offer. And I'll comment here, what's so great about this step 11 section that we've been covering today, and particularly this first paragraph I just read, it's telling us basically exactly what to do. There's prayers all in here. And we can just use these words every day. Or we can write prayers out that have all of these principles. And if we are religious, we can incorporate that. This is the 12 steps is never replacing, it's not replacing religious. This is a program of action. It's a spiritual path. It's a way to connect with a power greater than ourselves. And so, anything religious can also be added to this. And then I just want to point out this last couple comments here about being quick to see where religious people are right. So many religious people have dedicated their life to connecting to a source greater than themselves. And so, we can learn from that dedication, that devotion. Not, maybe it's not the same, we don't have the same idea about what God is, or, but we can see that they devote and dedicate themselves on a regular basis to stay connected, and we can learn from that. They have a process in which they do that, and that's what we're doing now. We're now learning to stay connected, and we do that every day, and we do it through prayer and meditation and quiet with this source, so that we can hear the source, and so that we can have love and tolerance become our code. And that can come from this prayer and meditation, this kind, speaking kindly and being kind and having tolerance. That can all come from this connection to this source, and that maybe being quiet, having some quiet time with this source who is benevolent and who can run the show and will take care of us. That's the bargain that we have. We will be taken care of if we perform this work well. And that's benevolent. And the book talks about, it may be it'll be better than anything we ever could have imagined. So there's that's very loving and kind and generous. And we can learn from that by having that connection running. And with that, I pass.
Thanks, Kathleen. This is Tina in Idaho. I just have a comment about that last section too, that suggestions about these may be obtained from one's priest, minister, rabbi. Be quick to see where religious people are right, make use of what they offer. And, many religious organizations are all about service, are all about serving one's community. So they can model for us this idea of being helpful and useful and being of service and contributing to life. There's another phrase in our literature that talks about being an intelligent agent of God's ever expanding creation. And so we're learning how to live our true purpose as we work these 12 steps. And with that, I'll pass.
Thank you, Tina. This is Heather. I'll read the last couple of paragraphs in this chapter. As we go through the day, we pause when agitated or doubtful and ask for the right thought or action. We constantly remind ourselves that we are no longer running the show, humbly saying to ourselves many times each day, "Thy will be done." We are then in much less danger of excitement, fear, anger, worry, self-pity, or foolish decisions. We become much more efficient. We do not tire so easily, for we are not burning up energy foolishly as we did when we were trying to arrange life to suit ourselves. It works. It really does. We alcoholics are undisciplined, so we let God discipline us in the simple way we have just outlined. But this is not all. There is action and more action. Faith without works is dead. The next chapter is entirely devoted to step 12. And my comments are that they give us some very explicit instructions here. There is no confusion about what we need to do during the day. So if we find ourselves agitated or doubtful, we pause and we wait and ask for the right thought or action. And if we do those things and constantly remind ourselves, "I will be done," then we don't fall into the trap of our addiction, whether it's codependent behaviors or drinking or whatever. And that sentence, "We become much more efficient. We do not tire so easily, for we are not burning up energy foolishly." I think that was one of the biggest things that I saw around recovery. I spent 24/7 hours a day mentally obsessing about any number of topics. And I would go to bed exhausted, but I couldn't sleep because my mind was still going, still obsessing, still trying to think my way out of problems or trying to fix people that I couldn't fix. And once I let go of that, and once I started to create that connection with my higher power, I had exactly what it said. I had energy. I did not tire easily. I became able to do things before recovery. Lots of times a shower and maybe do the dishes was a big day. Whereas now I can actually, be productive, be efficient, and contribute, and not just be all up in my head all the time. I do find it interesting that, they say that we alcoholics are undisciplined, so we let God discipline us in this simple way. And, it's not discipline in the form of punishment, but it is in the form of teaching us a way and having the discipline to use a new method of thinking that gets us, connected to our higher power and keeps us out of our thinking, our sick thinking. And I'm going to pass there and let somebody else share.
Thanks, Heather. So a couple of things here. This efficient, Heather, you just talked to it, but this efficient, I have begun to feel I call it's like a clean energy. And I sometimes when when we get into step 12, which we're about to get into, people will ask, I can't take any more sponsees, or I can't, um how do I, sponsees will ask me about that. And what I've learned in recovery is that, as I said earlier on the podcast, God will give us life as life is. And if I stay connected and my channel's cleaned out because of 10 every day, and because 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 is done, that the energy that comes through is quite remarkable. And I just trust that if I have 5 sponsees, if I have all kinds of people that I'm responding to and I'm being helpful, and like it's the energy is so efficient. And I just trust that higher power gives me exactly what I am capable of doing in 24 hours. It's when I go off into my own thinking about what should be done, how things should be going, how I need to solve a problem, worry about the past or worry about the future, regret the past, all that kind of stuff. That's when I can't do what higher power has for me in this 24 hours. I don't have the energy. I'm not efficient. But if I stay in this program of action and stay spiritually fit, it's remarkable. And I don't worry about how many people or how many ways to be helpful show up. It just happens, and it's not too much. And then I just wanted to point out this last thing about this humility, about letting God discipline us. Whew. Before recovery or active addicts, there is just no, 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 no. We are so far from being willing to do that, that we need disciplined. And so this is incredible humility, and that's what the program teaches us all about, is this humility around letting higher power run the show and discipline us. And as Heather said, it's not a punishment, it's a refinement. It's this constant refinement of this jewel that we were all meant to be in our own unique way. With that, I pass.
Thanks, Kathleen. I'm Dave in Oregon. Just a couple comments. First of all, this is about the 5th time, maybe in the last few pages, they've used the word constantly. Constantly remind ourselves, we addicts do not have the luxury of having a lot of time pass where we are disconnected from the practice of our program, from staying connected to our higher power. We simply don't have the luxury of that time. So the word constantly is kind of extreme, but constantly certainly would be many, many, many times a day. And so this is what we practice, is many times a day we take actions as described in these steps to get ourselves back to a place where we're not listening to our cravings in our mind and our obsessions and our thinking and so on and so forth. And then I wanted to comment on that list of the things we're in danger of. Little doubt that fear and anger and worry and self-pity and foolish decisions, those all sound like, yeah, those are things we do a lot of damage, need to stay away from those. Why would they include the word excitement? Isn't excitement really actually a good thing? Isn't that what we want? I think the reason that they would include that is A, it's getting, B, there's never enough. It's temporary. There never will be enough. It's always going to fall short. It's always going to be, and now I need more and more and more. I think that the self-seeking associated with that word excitement, there's nothing wrong, if you put quotes around the word wrong, with excitement. The problem is the motive of getting that outcome. Maybe getting a feeling that we're looking for that goes straight back to the craving. And it's why that word makes the list. And with that, I'll pass. Thanks.
This is Tina in Idaho, and I would like to comment on this. The disciplinarian, we alcoholics are undisciplined, so we let God discipline us. Actually, in the 12 and 12, it says, a line that is very helpful. Great suffering and great love are AA's disciplinarians. We need no others. So when we are in get, it hurts and we suffer and we're disciplined. It's not God. It's kind of like the discipline of if I walk off a roof, I'm going to splat on the ground. There's a consequence. No one's doing it to me. It's just the reality. Same thing. When I am living in love and living in get, it's great. I'm disciplined. So I learn from both. I learn from when I'm in get by the suffering, and I learn when I'm in acting from a place of give and acting from a place of love. And with that, I'll pass.
Thanks, Tina. Well, okay, we are at the end of the podcast. We have completed 10 and 11 today. Thank you for joining us. Our next podcast will be out soon, and we're going to cover step 12 and just focus on that one step. That's how important it is, and learn about more action. You can find our meetings at primarypurposebigbookstudy.com. We meet each week on Sundays at 2 p.m. Eastern and Wednesday evenings at 9 p.m. Eastern. Join us on the road of happy destiny.